Neutral is where both players have the greatest option set. Neither player is blocking or getting hit by anything, and their goal is to figure out the best way to start or continue their game plan. Naturally, this can be the scariest situation because there is no correct answer. And unfortunately, you can't neutral your opponent to death, so it has to end one way or another for you to win. The reality is you have to do something, but what do you do? Some players solve this problem by building out their neutral with game knowledge, personal experience, and even talking through situations with other players for perspective. This has proven to work over time, and there's no doubt a well-developed neutral is an invaluable asset. But no matter how developed your neutral is, there are virtually an infinite amount of interactions that can occur between you and your opponent. So not only can your neutral fail you once, it can fail you consistently. Sometimes it's the player, other times the matchup, could be a mixture of both, and naturally both are liable to change before a session is over. So why should the goal be to play neutral at all? For all these reasons and more, it makes complete sense to me that players decide to gravitate to characters who have the tools to bypass neutral altogether, only have to play it once and then run their set play, or always hold an advantage in neutral with a certain move. With all that being said, you could be asking yourself, should I even play neutral, or what mindset gets the most consistent results in neutral? As I said before, there's no correct answer, but your neutral is ultimately an extension of yourself. Your current understanding of the game systems, your opponent, even how you're feeling in the moment. So find what works for you above all else. Sajam touches on this concept on his video titled, "Your neutral doesn't have to be clean to be effective." Definitely check it out after finishing this. Whether you want to bypass neutral or not, reality is you're going to have to play neutral at some point. There are 3 reasons as to why. The obvious one is round start. Most fighting games will put you and your opponent equal distance from the corner where you're actionable at the same time. Now you could argue one character has an advantage at round start, but the round start is far from one. And some games even let you move before the round starts, which makes things even more chaotic. Either way, this neutral situation is inevitable, and mastering the art of the round start is sometimes all you need to take a set. The second situation revolves around attacks that have a property I like to call priority, which is an attack that carries such low risk but good enough reward the player has no reason not to do it. Think of Axel spamming his jump slash in Guilty Gear Strive. If he hits you with the jump slash, he gets good damage, pushes you into the corner, and gets access to one of his strongest moves. If you block it, there's not really much you can do to stop him from doing it again. So until you're in a position to do something about it properly, it's essentially his turn. Now let's say after he did it a few times, he just stopped. Well, what would you do? Most people's instinct is to jump in and close the gap, while you still have a chance. Pretty solid plan, but Axel was prepared for you to do that. See, players can intentionally not use these priority moves to bait a response, suddenly throwing the game into a neutral state. And since they're the ones dictating when and where this neutral state occurs, they're fully prepared to look for a really good reward, while you're simply reacting to the neutral state that was given to you, usually getting punished for it. If you're not ready when this happens, they're going to get advantages that aren't even real, and even though technically you were in a neutral state, at some point it's going to feel like you never get to play. This is the true power of characters like Axel. You're going to play against moves or characters like these at some point, so you might as well get ready. The most infamous situation that always leads to neutral is what I like to call the joust. The joust occurs when neither party is willing to risk the level of commitment necessary to actually bypass neutral, and this can take many forms. For example, if player 1 has a huge health lead and is walling out all of player 2's moves that actually bypass neutral, player 2 must now play neutral properly to mount a comeback. But remember, neutral doesn't have to be clean to be effective, and sometimes you have to do the last thing your opponent expects to win. And as manly as jousting may sound, sometimes it can just become a big game of chicken. We've all been there, one hit from winning, but one hit from dying, and both parties are just too scared to press anything, and you start thinking to yourself, well, I want to go out like a bitch, but if I lose, I'm still a bitch. It's a hell of a situation, win or lose, because after the awkward pause, you both know you were too scared to press anything anyway. The only kind of joust I can think of worse than that is the one where you know you can use your bypass neutral tool, but you know deep down you're not going to win the interaction that follows and die anyway. Which brings me to my point, neutral is fucking hard. Why play it if you don't have to? Neutral is one of my favorite parts about fighting games though, so I'm honestly playing devil's advocate. The goal of the video was to provide an alternative perspective to the often romanticized nooch. And there's so many directions we can take this conversation. Should games put a greater emphasis on neutral? And why do we get upset when our opponent's always trying to avoid it? Is avoiding neutral a sign of cowardice, or is it one of the biggest brain plays in all of fighting game history? As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this conversation, here are some more topics you might like. Stay curious, and thanks for watching.